are going to introduce ourselves to history of class 11th, and we are going to see how the chapters are being uh, formed in this particular session, and what are we supposed to study, and what will be evaluated and what will be not. I will also be explaining you the first chapter, not the entire chapter, but a part of it that you we will slowly and steadily proceed as you will understand different topics from this chapter. Okay, now so history is basically in class 11th being divided into units. So if unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4, and each unit has different chapters. So, say for example, this is the first unit, as you can see on your screen. The first unit is known as Early Societies, and the first unit has two chapters, from the beginning of time as well as writing and city life. Now, both the chapters are a part of the first unit, Early Societies, and we will begin our history syllabus from the beginning of time, right? Now, as we proceed further in the NCRT book, this entire PDF is sent to you. So please make sure that you read it, reread it, revise, recapitulate. Okay. Now, this particular section is the introduction of the unit. This is something that will not be evaluated in the examination. This is for a general information which talks about a lot of events that had happened in the ancient world history. Okay, a point that you have to remember here, that this particular text will only focus on world history. India or Indian history will not be mentioned in this session. That is something that you will read in the next session, that is class 12th. Right, so this is the introduction. It basically is intended to tell you about the different events that had taken place in world history. Okay, the next step that you will come with each unit, you will have a timeline. What is a timeline? A timeline in history shows all the major events that have taken place in world history. Again, this is something which will not be evaluated in your examination. This again is for your general information about the different events that had happened in world history, right? So, say for example, when people started using copper, when people started cultivating wheat, when people started using iron, all of these are information that, of course, you can read, but it's not for your examination purpose, right? So, before every unit, they give a lot of information of a lot of world events that had happened. This is not for learning purpose. This is only read. You can only read about them, and you can gain information. Okay. Now we have come to our first chapter. Now in history, the name is always theme. We don't call chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. We always say theme 1, theme 2, theme 3, unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. So each unit is divided into different chapters, and the chapters are not known as chapters. The name is given as theme 1, theme 2, theme 3, theme 4, right? Okay, now we shall begin our first theme 1, from the beginning of time. Okay, before I proceed further with this chapter explanation, I want you to know that in class 11th history, you will have 20 marks being reserved for your project work, uh, your project and Viva. Viva based on the project will have 20 marks, and your theory paper will be of 80 marks, right? So, what you write and what you learn is for 80 marks, and you'll prepare a project which is of 20 marks. Information about project is will be given as we reopen, and I'll tell you how to proceed in your project work, right? That will be for the end of the session. Okay, now the chapter is, or the theme to be precise, is theme 1, from the beginning of time, right? Now, what is this about? Let us first break down the name of the theme, from the beginning of time. It means the chapter begins with when history started, from the beginning of time. Time, of course, the history of the planet Earth is way, way earlier and way, way old. That is something that is not evaluated or something that is not studied in history. We study history when human existence is being seen. So the first chapter is basically upon the earliest human existence that we have seen on Earth and how they have evolved. So human evolution is the theme of this chapter, right? From the beginning of time means when humans have started existing and when humans have started doing various things that were required for survival. How did humans evolve and what were the branches in which humans are pertained to or humans were a part of? All of that will be studied in this chapter. Students, you have to listen to this video, watch this video time and again to make things extremely clear, and you have to read the pages that I will ask you to read in this NCRT chapter. Okay, now the first thing that you have to take into account is one acronym. The acronym is Million Years Ago. So, whenever there is a mention of MYA, this is the short form. Right? So wherever there is a mention of MYA, it means million years ago. So the first point that you have to remember in this chapter is that the human existence was seen on Earth around 5.6 million years ago. Right? This is the first point to be remembered. MYA again to be remembered million years ago. So we are tracing back our history to 5.6 million years ago. So something very interesting and something which is very, very courageous also, because to find sources of humans 5.6 million years ago is very, very difficult, right? If you say history 500 years ago, you will find a lot of sources. You will find texts, you will find paintings, you will find coins, you will find dynastic chronicles being written by rulers. So a lot of sources are being available for history, say for example 500 years ago or 1000 years ago. But this is 5.6 million years ago, which is very, very difficult for archaeologists and historians to form a history of, right? To reconstruct a history, it is very, very difficult to trace back so many years ago. Okay, now what are we going to study? The first paragraph tells us what are we going to study in this particular chapter. So, number one, we are tracing back our history to 5.6 million years ago. Number two, we will study how human beings used to obtain food. I have highlighted the important points here. If you have your PDF or the printout, you can highlight on them also, or you can make separate notes. I will always recommend to make notes, though I have given you detailed notes also, but having your own notes in your own handwriting is also a very good choice, right? Now, the second point that you have to understand here is, as historians and archaeologists do, that how did the early humans, and when I say early humans, I mean that this particular branch is still evolving. They have not become Homo sapiens as of yet. Homo sapiens is currently the modern humans. So the early humans, how did they obtain food? So this is something which is very interesting that we'll study. How did they survive? What did they use to eat for survival? And what were the methods to consume food, to obtain food? Right? Some early humans used to have hunting strategies. They used to hunt. Some used to gather food. Some used to depend on scavenging. All of these were being done by early humans, and there were different methods depending upon the season, circumstances, environment, etc. At times, the wild animals used to leave a carcass behind. Carcass is half-eaten animal, and the early humans used to obtain that to consume as well. Right? Now, the third point that we have to remember is, and we will see in this chapter, as to how did human beings communicated with each other. Because please understand, class, language and script are not natural, they are man made. We have made languages, we had made scripts. Early humans had no knowledge of language or script. So, how did they communicated with each other? That's a very interesting question again that we will answer in the coming passages as we will proceed in this chapter. Right? I'll give you a hint here. Languages cannot be verbal at times, so there were other ways to communicate. For example, your body language. Say, for example, you nodding your head in no is a sign that you are saying no, although you're not saying it through your vocal cords, but you are signifying something through your gestures. So that's one way to communicate. Or sounds. There are specific sounds that can be um, equivalent to one message. For example, a screaming sound can be interpreted as danger. If someone screams, that means there is danger. So this is something that the early humans had adopted to communicate with each other. Hand gestures, body language, specific sounds for interpreted as specific messages. Right. This is the way of communication because there was no language or script. Okay. Now the next point here is again very interesting part. Um, till today, we have societies that are dependent on hunting and gathering. They hunt and they gather their food, right? Now, there are a set of historians and archaeologists who believe that if we study the current hunting gathering society, we will gain a lot of knowledge about early humans. So think about it. If we study the current hunting gathering society, can we know about early humans? Early humans that are not being evolved. They are not Homo sapiens. They are Homo erectus or they are uh, Homo habilis or Homo erectus or Australopithecus. These are the different branches of evolution. So if we study the current hunting gathering society, there are many tribes in Africa that still hunt and still gather food. So if we study them, will we be able to understand what kind of society the early humans used to have? Just in retrospect, just think about it and we will study more about it. Some will say yes, some will say no. And there are different arguments on it. So we will study that as well. Is it beneficial to study the current hunting gathering society or not? Okay. Now, very, very important in the green part. Okay. Now, each of your theme will have a blue section. We call it the blue section. It's the first page of your theme and it is highlighted with blue. Why is it highlighted with blue? Now, you have to remember this. It's like an introduction class. I'm introducing you with your NCRT book. Now, this blue part is what? It is the sources of those chapters. What are sources? Sources are basically materials that historians use to reconstruct history. See, again, history is something that has to be written down, rewritten, revised, uh, and for that you need sources to depend on. For example, I'll give you a very easy example for this. Say people have constantly said that Alexander was a world conqueror. Now, how do we know that Alexander was a world conqueror? Is there something that tells about Alexander to us? Those are the sources, whether they are texts, whether they are coins, whether they are monuments, whether they are archaeological excavations, anything, any source that tells us about some event becomes an important part in writing history. Those are the sources that we have to depend upon when we write history, right? So, what are the source for early humans? See, again, we are tracing ourselves back to 5.6 million years ago. It's a very long time back. So, therefore, we have to depend upon sources that are only archaeologically present to us. See, we are talking about early humans. They can't write, they don't have coins, they can't build monuments. There is nothing that can be left by them deliberately for history. So, it's all that is archaeologically present to us that makes history um, writing possible for early humans. So, what are those sources? Number one, fossils. As you can see here, fossils. Number two, stone tools. And number three, cave paintings. Let's break this down. Fossils, what are fossils? Again, on the left hand side of my screen, you will see the definition of fossils here. Very, very important class for a one marker. So for a one marker, the mark distribution in history is 1 mark, 3 mark, 8 mark, 5 mark, and map based question, right? 5 markers are source based question. I'll tell you what source based questions are. These are not source based questions. These are only sources through which we understand one event or one development of history. These are not source based questions. Okay, I'll tell you what source based questions are as we proceed. Now, for fossils, this is the one marker that is very, very important. Now, what are fossils? Fossils are the remains or impressions of a very old plant, animal, or human which have turned into stone, right? A very, very important class. You have to remember this for a 1 mark. Uh, right? Okay. Now fossils, as you can see, fossils are something which uh, somewhere down the line all of you have heard, all of you have known, but there is a technicality to it. So if I ask you what are fossils, some of you may say um, the old um, uh, uh, skeletal fragments or skulls that are found. But please understand, bones do not survive so many years. 5 million years ago, we can't find bones of early humans. So what happens is, if you have seen certain motion pictures or films about dinosaurs, you might find that most of our knowledge about dinosaurs being present on Earth comes from fossils. Now, what happens is the skeletal fragments or the skull, say for example, is being imprinted on a stone, and all stones are not hard. Some stones, like stritite, are very soft stones that are present, and if a plant or if a skeletal fragment or a skull comes near to it, it makes an imprint or impact on that stone, right? So impressions are being made on stone. Also, this can be done when the stone is in the process of becoming a stone. So at times the sediments are formed around that particular item, and the impression is being made on the stone, that are known as fossils. It is not the bones or the skeletal fragments that we get. It is the impressions of those skulls and skeletal fragments on stone which are known as fossils, right? Very, very important for 1 mark, and they survive because rocks do not get destroyed easily. Weathering of rocks is a very slow process. So the impressions we find on rocks sustain for so many years instead of bones of a particular species of animals or human beings. Now fossils can be found about early humans. There are fossils about uh, ancient animal species. There are fossils on ancient plant species. So any impression on the stone makes it a fossil, right? Okay, now this is number one. Number two are stone tools. Of course, human beings had made tools for survival. When they're hunting animals, they have to make tools to hunt. So those stone tools have survived till date, and we can, of course, chemically analyze them, and we get to know that these stone tools were used by early humans. The third source is cave painting. What are cave paintings? Cave paintings are found all across the world made by early humans, and there are different reasons why they used to have cave paintings. So on the walls on the caves, they used to paint with whatever organic color they could obtain from plants. They could use that, and they used to paint the walls of the caves in which they used to live. So cave paintings again tell us a lot about early humans. In India, very interesting to know, there is one site of cave painting. It's in Bhimbetka. Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh is one of the earliest cave paintings that have been seen of early humans in the subcontinent, right? So these are the only three sources through which we get to know about the early humans. For a 1 marker, please note, I can ask you any two sources through which historians or archaeologists reconstruct uh, human history, and those two are human fossils, stone tools, or cave paintings. You can write any two of them for 1 marker, right? Or I can give you a fill in the blank where I can say the history of early humans can be reconstructed through human fossils, comma, dash, and dash. So you have to fill the other two. So all three should be remembered by you, uh, the sources to reconstruct early human history. Now, next point, class. Okay, we have found fossils. Say, for example, we have found fossils. Now, how do we know that this fossil belonged to early humans? How do we know that the skull, the shape of the skull that is there in the fossil, is of early human phase? How do we know that? How can we trace the period of that fossil? How can we say that this fossil is 3 million years ago, or this fossil can date to 5 million years ago? How to date how to put a date on fossils, how to find how old the fossils are. Now, there are two methods to do it. Number one, as you can see in the yellow highlighted part, the first way to do is through a direct chemical analysis. There are ways to find out the age of the sediments through direct chemical analysis, or there is another way, that instead of finding the age of the rock, we find the age of the sediments that made that rock. Right? These are the two various methods through which we find how old the fossils are. Either you had a chemical analysis and you find out the age of the rock, or you indirectly started uh, analyzing how old the sediments are that made that rock, and then you know that the fossil is so many years old. Right? These are the two methods. Again, for a one marker, the yellow highlighted part is very important. Okay, now coming to the next part. Now, in this, we will study about when people got to know about human evolution, how did they react it? Now, it's very very obvious that if someone comes to you and you have no knowledge of human evolution, and someone comes to you and say that, we have evolved from apes, chimpanzees are our ancestors, and we have come from primates, the earliest form of mammals. So you will react and say that no, we are a superior species and we have not evolved from any ape or any chimpanzee or any orangutan or so on and so forth. Now, the problem here is to understand that human evolution was not easy to accept. Number one, it was not, people could not generally connect themselves with the primates. They could not understand that we could have monkeys and humans could have a common ancestors. They could not understand or didn't wanted to understand that. Also, religious beliefs were very strong during that period. So, as you see the green part here, the Old Testament in the Bible says that human origin is actually an act of creation by God. All the religions have the same belief system, that human beings are created by God. They have not been evolved from something. Right? So it was very difficult for scholars during that period to believe that human evolution was actually the fact or the truth that existed. For one marker again, class, very important. If the question comes, um why were the scholars reluctant to accept that human evolution was a fact? This is the answer: because they believed that in the Old Testament of the Bible, that human origin was an act of creation by God. Right? No one will accept it because the religious belief during that period was very strong. So you can imagine when Charles Darwin has written his text, how much criticism Darwin have taken up for writing that book, right, on the origin of species. Okay, now coming to again, come to the left hand side of the screen. Here for one marker, the definition of species. All of these had to be learned, class. I'm sending you the PDF of the chapter also, and I'm sending you the detailed notes also. So please start learning these important terminologies. Species are a group of organisms that can breed in to produce fertile offspring. I think it's a very simple understanding, and I think in science, somewhere down the line in middle school, you have understood that species are required to breed to produce fertile offsprings. And it is very important to note as well that a member of one species cannot mate with another. It's biologically impossible, right? So species can mate within their own group to produce a healthy offspring, right? So please learn the definition of species as well. Now, a story about how the earliest uh, human existence was being proved by two people. A very interesting story. I have highlighted the important points in yellow, as you can see, and let's understand and listen to this story. Now, what happened in August 1856? There is a place called Neander Valley in Germany, and in Germany, in specific place called Neander Valley, mining activities. Mining is when you extract minerals from a particular place, right? So mining activities or quarrying activities were going on to extract limestone. Limestone is present in Neander Valley. So they're extracting limestone. A group of workmen, a group of workforce was um, doing the same. And when they were doing that, it was basically a cave. The valley had a cave and they were extracting limestone from it. And all of a sudden, they saw certain skull and skeletal fragments. What are skeletal fragments? Bones of a hand or limbs, right? Again, in a fossilized form. And they found that, and they were confused as to what these skull and skeletal fragments mean. So there was a time when the supervisor of this mining activity wanted to throw it away. He thought that it might be of some animal or some human being years back and is of no relevance. But he kept it. He kept it and he gave it to a person called Carl Furot. As you can see on the screen, the yellow part, highlighted part. Carl Furot. Carl Furot was a schoolmaster. He was a teacher and he was a natural historian, and he kept those skull and skeletal fragments. And he said, this is something which is very, very different to what we find today. This is not something which is very common, right? These skull fragments and skulls are not common. This is something which is very different. So he kept it. Fortunately, he kept it. Now we'll proceed with the story. Then Carl Furot gave a plaster copy, a plaster of Paris copy. He made the copy of that skull and skeletal fragments. He made a copy of it and he gave it to his friend Hermann Schwarzwasser. Now he was a German, of course, and he received it. Now this particular person, Hermann Schwarzwasser, was a professor of anatomy at Bonn University. So he knew about anatomy, he knew about skeletons, he knew about the body structure. People who study anatomy study the internal organs, the skeleton system, the skeletal fragments. So they are very well aware of it, right? Now, both of them, Hermann and Carl, published a paper, and in that paper, the first ever claim came that this is a form of human that is now extinct. Very, very interesting class and very, very controversial for that period. People could not accept it. It was very difficult for people to accept such a blasphemous claim that you have got skull and skeletal fragments from a form of human being that doesn't exist anymore, which was very difficult for people to digest. Okay, now moving forward, uh, this is something that the images shows that how the fossil fragments are excavated, and it's a very, very long process. It's not that historians and archaeologists know that we have to go to this place and we will find fossil. It is never that case. So they constantly find and research, and they find places where fossils can be found, right? It is a very painstaking process. It's not easy to find fossils. Okay, moving forward, after this paper was published, there is another uh, path breaking work that comes, very, very important. We have Charles Darwin. I have already mentioned him in a passing reference. Charles Darwin has published a book on the origin of species, and in this book, he has made a landmark because he explained evolution. Not only human evolution, he has explained evolution from a unicellular organism to a multicellular organism. And I believe all of you know somewhere down the line who Charles Darwin was in biology. I believe you have studied about him. He has argued, what are his views? He has argued that humans have evolved from animals a long time ago. So we are evolved from animals. This is the view of Darwin. Very, very important and very uncommon for that era. People again could not accept it. Darwin was criticized for writing such a thing. Okay, now to compare, this is what is being done by uh, Carl Furot and Hermann Schwarzwasser. They have published a paper, and Darwin has published a book. Both are talking about evolution. Now, very interesting now. Carl and Hermann had found skeletal fragments and skull. Now, where have they found it? I've already told you they have found the same in Neander Valley, a place in Germany. And because they have found this skull and skeletal fragments in Neander Valley, they named it Neanderthal man because they have found it in Neander Valley. So, this human being, which is now extinct, we don't find that kind of human being anymore. They have named this man as Neanderthal man. Probably skeletal fragments of women, but when history denotes something, they denotes it with man only. So Neanderthal man. Okay, now moving forward, this was the skull, the image of the skull. This is the Neanderthal man skull that was discovered again in a fossilized form. Was discovered in Neander Valley. Okay, now proceeding further. Now we'll get to the interesting part. These are the stories related to human evolution. Now, the textbook very clearly says that it is very, very difficult to put down all the developments of human evolution because it has been taking place somewhere around 36 to 24 million years ago. Very, very difficult to put down all those developments in one chapter, right? They very clearly say that if even if you take 100 pages equal to 1 million years, you will still require 3,600 pages long book, which is not possible, right? So whatever is there in this theme in this chapter is a very concise form of human evolution, right? It's not very detailed. Okay, now very, very important class, please take a look uh, on again the left hand side of my screen. I have the definition of primates again highlighted. Who are primates? Primates are a subgroup of a larger group of mammals. So in when you are making notes, please write down mammals as a larger group. Under the mammals are primates. Primates, who does primates include? Primates have monkeys, apes, and human beings, right? So primate is a subgroup in a larger group of mammals. Now under primates, first group is mammals, big group. Under mammals are primates. Under primates are hominoids. This is the first level of human evolution. Class, please take note. This is the first step of human evolution. So larger group mammal, then under that subgroup is primates. Under primates are hominoids, the first step of human evolution. Under hominoids, then you will write hominids. This is the flowchart that you will have to understand. This is how human evolution have taken place. Larger group is mammal, subgroup is primate. Within that subgroup are hominoids, and after hominoids come hominids. This is how evolution has taken place. So hominoids can be found around 24 million years ago. Hominids, which is a next evolutionary stage, are around 5.6 million years ago. This is where human existence has started, right? Okay. Now, what is the difference between hominids and hominoids? In the detailed notes part, I have given you a tabular difference between the two. You will learn that. It can be asked for a 3 marker or even for a 1 marker depending on the question paper. Now, there are difference between hominids and hominoids. Please understand who came first. Hominoids came first and hominids came after them. Hominoids came 24 million years ago. Hominids came 5.6 million years ago. Now, what is the difference between hominoids and hominids? Hominoids have a smaller brain size. How does it matter? It matters a lot. If you have a smaller brain size, you are less intelligent. That means your cognitive process are still not being formed. You can't think, you can't solve problems because you have a smaller brain size. So hominoids have smaller brain size. Hominids have larger brain size. Point number one. Point number two, hominoids were quadrupeds. Who are quadrupeds? Quadrupeds are species that walk on all four limbs, right? They don't, their spinal cord is not erect and therefore they are walking on all four limbs. So imagine a chimpanzee, they walk on all four limbs. They are somewhere down the line uh, the same as hominoids. Hominoids used to walk on all four limbs. Hominids, on the other hand, had an upright posture. What does it mean? Upright posture means that their spinal cord is erect, it's straight, like we have. And they have bipedal locomotion. Bipedal locomotion is walking on 2 feet. Instead of using all 4 limbs, hominids are walking on feet, 2 feet. Now, as you can see, it's very, very clear that hominoids are a backward stage of evolution. They have not evolved, whereas hominids are evolved. They have they have a straight spine. They can walk on 2 feet. They can make tools, which is very, very important. See, the next point is they can make tools. Hominids could not make tools. Hominids used to make tools. And how could they make tools? Because they can use their hands. Hominoids have used all 4 limbs, so their hands are not freed. Hominids, on the other hand, can make tools because they have free hands, right? Okay, let's recapitulate again. We have a larger group called mammals. Under mammals are primates. Under primates are hominoids. Hominoids are a backward stage of human evolution, they are not evolved. Hominids are a better stage of human evolution because hominids have a larger brain size. Hominids can walk on 2 feet. Hominids can make tools. Hominids had a erect spine. The spinal cord is straight, erect, right? These are the difference between hominoids and hominids. So human evolution started with the coming of primates, after that coming of hominoids, and after that coming of hominids. I believe it is clear now. Now, where were hominids found? Hominids, the better evolutionary stage of humans, where were they found? They were found in Africa. Note this point very clearly if you're making your class notes by the side. Uh, all the evolutionary stages that have come, you see a direct evidence of those stages in Africa. So, Africa is basically the cradle of human evolution. Major developments have taken place in Africa and then it has gone to different parts of the world, Europe, Asia, etc. So, most of the developments of evolution has taken place in Africa. How can we say that hominids were found first in Africa and then later on they had went to different parts of the world? So the first point that it's highlighted in blue class, take a look on the screen. How can we say that there is an African origin of hominids? That means hominids first came in Africa. First point states that African apes that are most closely to hominids. So today, when we see African apes, they are the ones that are closest to hominids. So that proves that it was the African apes that evolved into hominids. So it's Africa from where everything started. The apes that are found in Africa are very, very closely related to hominids. Point number two, the first hominid fossil, the earliest one, the oldest fossil of hominids are found in Africa. What is the name of that fossil? It is Australopithecus. Australopithecus is a branch of human evolution. I'll explain you what it is. And the earliest hominid fossil of Australopithecus is found in Africa. That shows that hominids had always been a part of Africa. So every development that has taken place on an evolutionary scale have taken place in Africa. Okay, moving forward now. This image shows you the hand precision. So if you see the C part here, the thumb is being used, and when thumb is being used, you can make tools, you can pick up things easily. Imagine not having a thumb. Picking up things and making things and even writing is not possible without a thumb, right? So, in which stage thumbs came up? Hominid. Hominoids still walked on 4 limbs. They could not have thumbs or hand precision. It is the hominids who had hand precision. Okay, moving forward now. There is a larger family to which hominids belong to. They are hominidae. The term has to be remembered as it is. Hominids belong to a larger family called hominidae. Now, hominidae have all kinds of human beings. Now, this is something that will come as a new information that you have not studied. What is this? We are not the only form of human beings. We succeeded, of course, but there were other forms of human beings also. Uh, what are we? We are Homo. We came from the branch of Homo. We were Homo habilis, we were Homo erectus, we were Homo sapiens. So, Homo is one branch, and there were other branches also of human beings. What is the other branch? Other branch is Australopithecus. So, there was a direct contention and competition between Homo and Australopithecus, who will be the better, who will survive. It's a survival of the fittest. If you have heard the Darwin theory, survival of the fittest. So there was a 50-50% chance that Australopithecus could have succeeded and Homo could have been defeated in the survival struggle. And today, we, instead of calling ourselves Homo sapiens, would have called ourselves Australopithecus sapiens, right? But in the long run, Homo won, and we call ourselves Homo sapiens, right? So these are two branches of human beings only. They Australopithecus was also a branch of human being. Homo was also a branch of human beings. It is in the competition of survival, Homo won, right? Now, hominids, let's take the characteristics of hominids. We have already discussed this. They have a larger brain size, they have an upright posture, they have bipedal locomotion, that means they're walking on 2 feet, and they have specialization of hands so that they can make tools. Now, let's see the difference between Australopithecus and Homo. Australopithecus, again, I'm telling you, is another branch of human being. They are not human beings, but another branch of human beings. We come from Homo. We might have also come from Australopithecus, but in the long run of survival, Homo succeeded in surviving and Australopithecus became extinct. Like dinosaurs, they became extinct and there is no trace of Australopithecus anymore. But we could have been a succeeding race of Australopithecus instead of Homo if things would have been different. Now, what is the difference between Australopithecus and Homo? The characteristics are very different. Australopithecus again did not have a larger brain size. They have a very smaller brain size compared to Homo. One of the reasons they got defeated in the survival struggle. Australopithecus had heavier jaws. The jaws were very heavy. And why were their jaws heavy? Because they have larger teeth. On the other hand, Homos had a larger brain size. Homos had uh, smaller jaws and smaller teeth. So, as you can see, anatomy had favored Homo instead of Australopithecus. Okay, what is the literal meaning of Australopithecus? How does this name comes out? And this name comes about from the place from where Australopithecus have been found. The fossil of Australopithecus have been found from uh, uh, the Latin word austral here means southern, and Pithecus come from ape, so southern ape. Since they were found in the southern part of Africa and they looked more or less like ape, they were known as southern ape. The literal meaning of Australopithecus is southern ape, right? And this is again for a one marker that you have to remember that Australopithecus is a term that comes from the Latin word austral and the Greek word pithekos meaning southern ape. Okay. Moving forward, class, I believe till now things are clear. Please re-listen to this video time and again so that things become clear. You can also write to me. You can mail me in case you have a query or a doubt regarding this. Okay, now you see this blue part. This is source. A passage will be given. This is a source. A passage will be given like this, and questions will be asked based on it. We'll practice it. This is a source, and source based question is when such a source is being given, and it's like unseen passage in English. A passage is being given to you, and questions are being asked on basis of that. These are source based questions, which are 5 mark each. Okay, we will go to positive feedback mechanism in the next class. And the last thing that we have to remember here is a point which shows that how are one species different from another. They are different. If I say distinguish between apes and human beings, how are they different? They are different on the basis of bone structure, body. Say for example, species of early humans are different according to their skull size and distinctive jaws. We have already seen this how Australopithecus and Homo were different. One had heavier jaws, the other had uh, lesser jaws. One has a larger brain, the other has a smaller brain. When you have a larger brain, your skull size is increased. When you have a smaller brain, your skull size has decreased. So these are the characteristics on which uh, we have we can distinguish species from each other, right? Now, till here is our topic for today. I hope you have understood. Please write about your queries. Please read these pages. I have given you a PDF format of your detailed notes also. Make sure that you learn these, and uh, in case of doubts, you can revert back to me with questions, right? This is the first chapter of history, the first theme of history, which is beginning of time, and it talks about human evolution. Thank you, everyone.